This is my 122nd video on my work with OO gauge. See part 1 of this series for my reasons for getting into OO gauge when I already had a lot invested in working in N gauge and I didn't really have space available for a large, fully operational OO gauge layout. Also see my lengthy series on my N gauge railway modelling for smaller and more complex scenery and smaller scale trains running. This part will be a fairly short one, dealing with some work on the stations on my shelf layout, chiefly adding station name boards and platform numbers. I still have a bunch more work to do on these stations, and I initially thought I'd roll all of the station detailing into one video. But then it would get kind of long and take a while to arrive, so I changed my mind and I'm just posting piecemeal what I've done so far. I did add platform kiosks, benches and clocks to the stations a little while ago using Metcalfe mini kits, and you can see that process in part 113. And you may notice the kiosks and clocks and benches in this video. I thought that as a next step I should at least get round to adding some station name boards. I had already decided on names for the stations when I added signal boxes from Ratio and Will's kits in parts 106 and 107, since I wanted to put the station names on the boxes. I'm very fond of the BBC railway-based comedy programme Oh Dr. Beeching, made in the 1990s. I own it on DVD and I've watched all of the episodes so many times that I can virtually perform the script along with the cast. So I decided to name the stations on my shelf layout after stations in that show. Hatley, which is the station where the show is based, and Wenstead, another station often mentioned in the show. Hatley, 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 change here for Buston and Wenstead, as they're always saying when a train arrives. Not that the Hatley station on my shelf layout is anything like the station shown in the programme. I just decided to use the names because of their pleasant association. I wasn't entirely sure how I was going to do the station name boards. I had one name board that came with the Hornby Terminus station kit. That was apparently designed to go on top of a fence. I had some fencing left over from Airfix platform fittings kits that I'd previously used that I thought might be relevant. I thought that perhaps it might work to attach boards to the pillars supporting the platform roof, so I brought one of the roof sections down to the bench. And I fished out various other bits of plastic left over from this and that I thought could possibly be useful. I had also picked up another Will's platform accessories set. I've used this set before on both of my other OO gauge layouts. This set includes 2 station name boards as well as various advertising signs. Here are the contents of the Will's platform accessories set. I will use most of this set for the stations on my shelf layout, but the only parts that you'll see being used in this video will be the 2 white station name boards at top. I decided that I would use the 2 Will's boards for Wenstead Station, where there were fences on both sides. I figured that those boards should work fine attached to the top of the Hornby fences. For Hatley Station, I decided to use the Hornby board on the fence on platform 1, and to attach boards of similar size to a platform roof pillar for the other 2 platforms. I cut the boards to be attached to the platform pillar from pieces of scrap plastic. I also cut small square pieces to be used for platform numbers from some other leftover parts that I had. I measured the sizes of the various boards in inches using my calipers and then multiplied by 600 to get the size in pixels for printing at 600 dpi on my PC printer. Then I edited the required signs to those sizes in a graphics program, except I miscounted and only printed 2 Hatley names when I actually needed 3, so I had to print another set. I cut out the names and numbers that I had printed using a sharp knife. Hatley Station has 3 platforms and Wenstead Station 2. And I wanted to make all of the platform number boards double-sided, so I needed 2 numbers for each platform. I used rocket card glue to glue the names and numbers to the boards as precisely as I could manage. When it came to fitting the Wenstead boards to the top of the Hornby fencing on that station, it turned out that the boards were too long to fit between the main posts of the fencing. So I had to cut the top off from one main post to allow the board to fit. After cutting off the top of one main post on each fencing section, I glued the boards in place, centred on the cut-down posts, using polycement. I never quite know whether polycement is going to work, as it isn't really exactly a glue. It's a solvent that works by dissolving polystyrene plastic. So it will really only glue things together if both parts to be glued are made of polystyrene and not painted or coated in any way. I knew that the parts from the Wills kits were made of polystyrene, but I wasn't at all sure about the Hornby fencing. But it turned out that the polycement glued the boards to the fencing fine. The two boards are offset on the fencing sections in opposite directions because they're going to be placed on opposite sides of the station, and I wanted them to both appear the same distance from the end of the fencing. I glued the board from the Hornby kit with the Hatley name to the top of a fencing section. This one fitted between the main posts, presumably because this was how it was intended to go, although you'd think that Hornby could have provided more than one name board with the station kit. I glued my other two Hatley name boards to either side of one of the roofing pillars. Again, I wasn't sure whether polycement would work, not really knowing what the pillars were made of, but it did work. Then I glued the platform number boards to the sides of the roofing pillars, first for the two platforms of Wenstead Station. And here those are with the pillars reinserted in the roof. Whilst I was doing this, I also finally got round to cutting the pins off from the bottoms of the roofing pillars for Wenstead Station. I couldn't insert the pins on the bottoms of the pillars into the intended holes in the Hornby platforms for this station because I had to place the platforms closer together than Hornby intended in order to make them fit with the Superquick terminus station buildings that I used for this station. Superquick just had their platforms spaced together closer than Hornby intended. So ever since I created that station, I had just been resting the roofing sections on top of the platforms, but of course when seen up close they looked strange that way, as they were actually resting on the small square pins protruding from the bottoms of the pillars, intended by Hornby to go into the square holes in the middle of the platform sections. I felt like a bit of a vandal cutting off the pins, as I was destroying any possibility of the roofing sections being fitted to platforms as Hornby intended, but cutting off the pins really made the roofs work better for my station. I used a cutting disc in a rotary tool to cut off all of the pins, a bit fiddly to do, as I wanted to cut off the pins but not to otherwise damage the bases of the pillars. I wore protective magnifying glasses to do this, and I did my best to keep the cutting disc aligned with the end of the pillar. I cleaned up the bottoms of the pillars afterwards with an emery board. With plastic, the cutting disc actually cuts by melting the plastic rather than by rubbing it off as dust. Here's the end section of the Wenstead roof on the bench with its platform numbers mounted and its pillar pins cut off. And here's the section for the far end of the Wenstead roof with the Metcalfe clock mounted in the middle. I mounted the platform numbers for Hatley Station to roof pillars, 3 numbers in this case, with platforms 2 and 3 being on opposite sides of the same island. Here's the Hatley sign on the fence in place. And here are the Hatley name boards on the pillar, with bench and kiosk from the Metcalfe mini kits. Here's a wider view showing both Hatley name boards. And here are the platform numbers on Hatley Station. Not great modelling perhaps, but I think I can live with them. Here's a view inside Hatley Station looking down to the end. I put the platform numbers at the ends of the station nearest to the buildings, as I assumed they were there mainly to inform passengers entering the station. Here's one of the Wenstead signs mounted on the fence at the end of the station. The Wills kit does supply posts for supporting these boards, but I didn't use those posts in this case. Here you can see both Wenstead name boards. Of course, the near one is really only going to be seen from the back, except from the point of view of trains or passengers. You can also see Metcalfe benches and a Metcalfe kiosk here. Here's a view looking into Wenstead Station from the end. Of course, more things need to be added to these stations, notably some staff and passengers, and I intend to get to that soon. Here's a view looking into Wenstead Station from the side, showing the platform numbers. I noticed that the bus has London destination info on the front, not really appropriate for my layout, but it's not very noticeable, so I don't think I shall bother to change it. Here's a view down Hatley Station. The kiosk at right is a Hornby Scaledale item. This was taken without flash, as flash would pick up the foreground items too much. Here's a view across the name boards on the pillar, again without flash. Perhaps I should have got fancier with those name boards, adding proper frames or borders, I don't know. And here's a final view of Wenstead Station. Without the pins inserted in the platform holes to keep them in place, the pillars don't really stand exactly vertically properly, but I don't think the problem is very noticeable. So I think the next thing to be done for these stations will be adding some figures, and odds and ends such as luggage, trolleys, etc.